Clough Head. Clough Head meaning hilltop above the ravine is a fell or hill in the English Lake District. It marks the northern end of the main ridge of the Helvellyn range and is often walked as part of the Ridge Walk. The fell stands south of the village of Threlkeld and the A66 road, and it forms the steep eastern side of the tranquil valley of St. John's in the Vale. On its western side the fell displays a dark mass of rocky crags and a deep-set rocky ravine. On the other side it has smooth grassy slopes. Beneath the north face is the steep valley or clough from which Clough Head gets its name. Also beneath the steep northern face lies the lower hill of Threlkeld Knotts, a granite hill which has been much quarried round its margin. A number of different types of rock are found on and around Clough Head, which were formed in very different circumstances. These include deep-sea sedimentation, effusive volcanic lava flows, explosive volcanism, an intrusion of granite, mineralisation, and finally glacial sculpting. To understand the geology of Clough Head is to understand much of the geology of the Lake District. An old route known as the Old Coach Road passes beneath Clough Head. Most of the fell is open access land, which walkers can enter from either end of the Old Coach Road or from a lane south of the village of Threlkeld. 4 main routes lead to the summit. Topography. With a height of 726 m, Clough Head is the lowest summit of the Helvellyn range. Gentle grass-covered slopes on the south and east sides of the fell drop to a broad cull and to Mosedale, both of which separate Clough Head from Great Dodd, its neighbour to the south. To the north of the summit the ground drops abruptly down a steep scree-covered and craggy slope which marks the northern end of the Helvellyn range. This face is called Red Screes from the colour of the rock. Beneath Red Screes is the lower, rounded, grassy hill of Threlkeld Knotts. This hill rises gently from the valley of the river Glendoramachin, which separates the Helvellyn range of fells from Blencathra and the northern Lakeland fells. A steep valley to the east of Threlkeld Knotts, which begins immediately below Red Screes, is the clough from which Clough Head is named. In the bottom of this valley there is a sheepfold known as Clough Fold. Steep rocky crags guard the whole western side of the fell, rising abruptly from the green valley of St. John's in the Vale. This western face of Clough Head is steep, rough, and rocky. The principal rock features are, from north to south, Buck Castle, Wanthwaite Crags, and Bram Crag. South of Wanthwaite Crags is the very steep Fisher's Wife's Rake, a grassy break in the cliffs though with scree which allows determined fell walkers to ascend the fell on this side. North of Bram Crag is a deep-seated rocky ravine called Sandyveed Gill. This gill contains a considerable flow of water in its rocky gorge, but it often has only a dry bed by the time it gets down to valley level. Northeast of the summit of Clough Head is the lesser top of White Pike. From here the ridge descends and gradually broadens into the rough expanse of Threlkeld Common. The western slopes of Clough Head drain into St. John's Beck, which flows north into the river Greta, and which in turn joins the river Derwent at Keswick. The southern and eastern slopes drain into Mosedale and Mosedale Beck, which also joins the river Greta via the river Glendoramachin. Threlkeld Knotts. Threlkeld Knotts meaning the knobbly hill above Threlkeld is a lower, rounded hill nestling against and overshadowed by the steep northern face of Clough Head. Its curving summit ridge contains 3 small tops, each of which is marked by a cairn. From Threlkeld Knotts there is a striking view of Red Screes just above, and a narrow path slants up through the crags to the west shoulder of Clough Head. On the northern slope of Threlkeld Knotts, not far above the large quarry, are the remains of an Iron Age settlement. The documented remains include 7 hut circles, 5 enclosures, 2 trackways, a field system, and some 50 cairns which probably represent field clearances. Remains of enclosure walls may still be seen about 200 m north of the Old Coach Road. Old Coach Road. An old route marked on maps as Old Coach Road crosses the northern slopes of Threlkeld Knotts and skirts the eastern side of Clough Head, reaching a height of 437 m as it crosses from Wanthwaite in St. John's in the Vale to High Row near Dockwray. This has suffered from rainwater erosion in recent years, but remains a useful track for walkers. Near the summit of the road is Haweswell, a spring issuing from a crevice in the rock. The Ordnance Survey 125,000 map shows the road as an other route with public access and as a traffic-free cycle route. It does not show it as either a byway or a restricted byway. However, official signs present on the gates at both ends of the road clearly show that access by motorized vehicles is permitted. Routes. The whole of Clough Head, Threlkeld Knotts, and Threlkeld common above the intake wall which encloses the lower agricultural land, and Threlkeld quarry is open access land. Entry to this land can be had from 3 points from either end of the old coach road, or from the lane leading to Newsham Farm. This lane begins opposite Threlkeld village, or it can be joined from the disused railway line alongside the road to the quarry. Walkers may approach the summit by means of 4 principal routes. A narrow footpath leads from the old coach road at a point 250 m east of Haweswell to White Pike and then on to the summit. Another narrow path leads from Threlkeld Knotts, slanting up through the crags and scree of red screes to emerge on the west shoulder of Clough Head. From there one may go up gentle grassy slopes to the summit, although the main path contours round to meet the track coming up from Great Dodd, which suggests that many ridge walkers bypass the top just as the ridge path bypasses nearly all the other tops of the range. From the south, the ridge track from Great Dodd leads straight up the long gentle slope to the top. Finally, Fisher's Wife's Rake is a possible route up through the crags on the west side of Clough Head for energetic and determined walkers, but it is very steep. Climbers or scramblers with some rock climbing experience and a rope for the more difficult pitches can ascend the hidden recesses of Sandybeat Gill. Sandybeat Gill was the first new route in the Lake District to be pioneered by the brothers George and Ashley Abraham in 1890. Although George was only 18 at the time, and Ashley 14, they had already gained true rock climbing skills elsewhere in the lakes. Walkers should leave the gill well alone. Clough Head is often included as the first or last step of a traverse of the Helvellyn range. It may also be included in a longer version of the horseshoe walk around Deepdale, which takes in the 3 Dods to its south. This walk begins at High Row and takes advantage of the old coach road. Summit. The summit is marked by an Ordnance Survey triangulation column and a wind shelter. It provides a good view of Blencathra to the north and a wide, all-round view, broken only by Great Dodd, with glimpses of both the Solway Firth to the north. To the southwest the vista of the high fells is especially striking. Alfred Wainwright included a drawing of himself regarding Blencathra from this viewpoint in his pictorial guides to the Lakeland Fells. Mark Richards recommends White Pike as a better place for contemplating the view. Geology. Names. Clough Head was called Threlkeld Fell in Thomas West's 1778 guidebook. Its present name, Clough Head, was first recorded by the Ordnance Survey in 1867. Clough is a dialect word from the Old English clough, a ravine. This appears to be a reference to a steep valley just below Red Screes, and which contains a sheepfold called Clough Fold. Thus Clough Head is the hill top above the ravine, White Pike is the pale summit, recorded since 1774, probably named from its pale-colored rock, and perhaps in contrast to the reddish color of Red Screes beneath the main summit. Threlkeld Knotts was first recorded by the Ordnance Survey in 1900. Knot is a dialect word from the Old Norse knotter, wall, hard round mass used of compact or craggy hills. Hence, Threlkeld Knotts is the knobbly hill above Threlkeld, a place name recorded from as early as 1197, and meaning the slaves spring from the Old Norse threla, thrall, slave, and Old Norse kelda, a spring. Thrall may have been the word used by the Norse settlers to refer to the native Britons. Fisher's Wife's Rake is Mrs. Fisher's path. Rake is a dialect word of unknown origin which refers to a narrow path on a hill. Mark Richards claims that the name comes from the Fisher family of Rakehow across the valley. He says the husband cut peat on the col above, and his wife hauled it down by sled, but he gives no indication of the source of this information. Notes and references. Notes. References. List of hills in the Lake District. List of fells in the Lake District.